I still remember the exact second my life cracked open. The room smelled like expensive leather and victory. Glass walls surrounded the boardroom of Cole Global Industries. The skyline stretched behind Ethan Cole like a throne built from steel and money. Investors from 3 continents sat around the long black table. Their suits were perfect. Their smiles were sharp. A $2 billion merger waited inside the documents in front of them. All Ethan needed to do was sign. I wasn't supposed to be there. I knew that. But something in my chest told me I had to walk into that room today. So I opened the door. Conversations died instantly. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Ethan looked up slowly. His expression changed from confusion to irritation. Then he leaned back in his chair. A smirk spread across his face. Why are you here?" he said. His voice carried across the room. "This meeting is for people who actually matter." A few executives laughed. The sound sliced through me. For a moment I thought he would stop there. I thought maybe he would remember who I was. But he didn't. He looked directly at me. Then he said the words that shattered everything. "You're insignificant in this company, and in my world." Silence followed, the kind that suffocates a room. No one spoke. No one defended me. I looked around the table. Investors, executives, people whose companies I once helped rescue. None of them said a word. I felt something strange. Not anger, not even humiliation, just clarity. I nodded once. Then I turned and walked out. 3 minutes later, the empire Ethan built started collapsing. But he didn't know that yet. Shushya, before the chaos begins, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, you're in the right place. And if you've been here before, you already know these stories hit close to home. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. This channel tells powerful stories about betrayal, power, revenge, and the quiet strength people underestimate. And if stories like this pull you in, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because what happens next will change everything. The boardroom door closed behind Lena Cole. Inside, Ethan picked up his pen. His confidence never wavered. To him, the interruption had been nothing more than an inconvenience. "Let's proceed," Ethan said. The investors nodded. Papers slid across the table. But before the pen touched the contract, the door burst open again. Ethan's assistant rushed in. His face was pale. "Sir, we have a problem." Ethan frowned. "This is not the time." But the assistant didn't stop. "The Singapore partners just canceled the deal." Silence fell. One investor leaned forward. "What do you mean canceled?" The assistant swallowed. "They terminated the agreement 5 minutes ago." Ethan laughed once, short and sharp. "That's impossible." He grabbed his phone. Then another phone rang across the table. Then another. Grace Lynn, where the company's CFO checked her laptop. Her expression slowly tightened. Another alert appeared on her screen. "Sir," she said carefully, "the Dubai acquisition just pulled out." Now the room shifted. Investors exchanged glances. Phones continued buzzing. Another notification flashed. The European partnership deal was frozen. 3 massive agreements. Gone in less than 10 minutes. Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "What the hell is happening?" No one had an answer, but Grace Lynn quietly asked one question. "Sir, where is Lena?" Ethan Cole did not believe in coincidence. He believed in control, and right now control was slipping. "This has nothing to do with her," he snapped. Grace didn't argue, but she kept studying the alerts on her screen. Each canceled deal had something in common. The introductions, the negotiations, the original connections. All of them had come through Lena years ago. At the time, Ethan had barely noticed. Back then, she was simply helping. Now those same contacts were pulling away. Investors whispered across the table. Someone muttered about stock stability. Another questioned leadership. Ethan's phone buzzed again. A message appeared on the screen. Victor Hale, his biggest rival, the man who had been waiting years for Ethan to stumble. The message was simple. "Oh, looks like your empire is cracking." Ethan's jaw tightened. He deleted the message. Then he dialed Lena. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Ethan slammed the phone down. "She has nothing to do with this," he said again, but his voice no longer sounded certain. Across the table, Grace Lynn kept watching the pattern unfold. And deep down, she already knew something Ethan refused to accept. Lena Cole had just walked out of the building, and half the world's investors seemed to be walking out with her. Outside the towering headquarters of Cole Global Industries, Lena sat quietly in the back of a black car. The driver pulled away from the curb. Traffic moved slowly through downtown. Lena looked out the window. The glass reflected her face. Calm. Still. Her phone buzzed. She already knew who it was. Daniel Reyes, she answered. His voice carried a mix of disbelief and curiosity. So it finally happened. Lena didn't respond. Daniel chuckled softly. You should see the news feeds right now. More messages arrived on her screen. International investors, private contacts, old partners, each one asking the same question. What's your next move? Daniel asked the one question that mattered. Lena, will you join my team? She watched Cole Global's tower shrink behind them. For years, that building had been her world. Now it felt like a stranger's house. She spoke quietly. I haven't decided yet. Daniel understood exactly what that meant. The game had just begun. Inside the boardroom, panic was spreading. Phones kept ringing. Emails flooded inboxes. Grace Lynn opened a detailed transaction log. Her eyes narrowed. Every collapsed deal traced back to a single chain of introductions. One name appeared repeatedly. Lena Cole. Not as a public negotiator, but as the quiet connector behind the scenes. Grace leaned back slowly. Memories began clicking together. Private dinners, investor meetings, strange phone calls Lena would take in the hallway. Ethan had always dismissed them, but Grace remembered the results. Every time Lena became involved, doors opened. Billions flowed in. Grace looked toward Ethan. He was shouting into his phone, trying to stabilize investors, trying to force control back into his hands. Grace whispered under her breath, "Oh my God." The stock market reacted faster than Ethan expected. News of the failed deals spread through financial networks. Cole Global's stock dropped 5% within an hour, then 8%. Ethan moved into damage control mode. He called executives in Singapore. They refused his calls. He contacted the Dubai acquisition team. Their office responded with a formal statement. Partnership terminated. European investors issued the same message. No explanations, no negotiations, just silence. Victor Hale sent another message. You should have valued the right people. Ethan threw his phone across the room. The board members watched him carefully now, not with admiration, but with doubt. A billionaire's greatest enemy wasn't competition. It was uncertainty. And Ethan Cole had just created a room full of it. Miles away, Lena stepped out of the car. The building in front of her was quiet, private, unmarked. But inside it operated one of the most powerful investment networks in the world. Daniel Reyes waited near the entrance. He hadn't changed much. Still sharp, still observant. He studied Lena carefully. You look calmer than someone who just crashed a $2 billion deal. Lena smiled faintly. I didn't crash it. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Then what did you do? She looked toward the skyline. Just stepped aside. Daniel laughed softly. You always were dangerous when people underestimated you. He opened the door. Come inside. Back at Cole Global headquarters, Grace continued digging into financial records. The deeper she looked, the more unsettling the truth became. The canceled investors were not random. They belonged to a private network, a closed circle of global capital. And every entry point into that network had one gatekeeper. Lena Cole. Grace's heartbeat quickened. Without Lena, Ethan's connections weren't just weaker. They were non-existent. She printed several documents. Then she hurried toward Ethan's office. He needed to see this, whether he wanted to believe it or not. Ethan stood alone in his office. The skyline that once symbolized victory now felt like a wall closing in. He stared at his phone again. Still no response from Lena. For the first time in years, doubt crept into his mind. Grace burst into the room. Sir, you need to see this. She placed the documents on his desk. Ethan scanned the pages. His expression slowly hardened. Every major deal, every powerful investor, every global expansion, all traced back to one quiet connection. Lena. Grace spoke carefully. Sir, without her, these investors won't work with us. Ethan looked out the window, and for the first time that day, he realized something terrifying. His empire might not belong to him at all. Ethan Cole stared at the documents in silence. For the first time that morning, the noise of the company faded behind him. The numbers on the pages were precise. Names, introductions, international partnerships. Grace had mapped every connection, and they all led back to Lena. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Not guilt, not yet, just disbelief. "That's impossible," he said. Grace remained standing. Her voice stayed calm, but the tension behind it was obvious. "Sir, the pattern is clear." She tapped one page. "This investor group from Singapore." Another page. "The Dubai Acquisition Board." Then another. "The European partners." She looked directly at him. All of them entered through Lena's network. Ethan pushed the papers aside. "You're telling me my company runs on my wife's contacts?" Grace didn't answer immediately. Instead, she chose her words carefully. "I'm saying the bridges we used to build this empire were hers." Ethan stood up slowly. His jaw tightened. "She's my wife," he said. "She doesn't run global investment networks." Grace exhaled quietly. That's what everyone believed. Ethan turned toward the window again. For years, he had believed he was the architect of everything. But the documents behind him told another story, and it was a story he had never bothered to read. Across the city, Lena stepped into Daniel Rea's private conference room. The space was quiet and minimalist. No corporate logos, no flashy branding, just power disguised as simplicity. Daniel poured 2 glasses of water. He slid one toward Lena. "You disappeared for years," he said, "and suddenly half of Ethan Cole's deals collapse the moment you walk out." Lena didn't react. Daniel studied her. "You know the entire financial world is watching this, right?" She nodded slightly. "That was inevitable." Daniel leaned forward. "Investors are calling me already. Everyone wants to know where you'll go next." Lena remained silent for a moment. Her phone vibrated again. Another investor. Another message. Another door opening. Daniel finally asked the question that had been waiting between them. "Hey, did you plan this?" Lena looked directly at him. "No." Then she added something that made Daniel pause. "But I was prepared for it." Back at Cole Global Industries, the board had reconvened. The atmosphere had completely changed. Earlier that morning, the room had been filled with celebration. Now it felt like a courtroom. Ethan sat at the head of the table, but the authority in the room had shifted. Board members spoke cautiously. "Stock is down 12%. Media outlets are asking questions. Investors want explanations." Ethan clenched his hands together. "This is temporary." One of the senior board members leaned forward. "With respect, Ethan, temporary problems don't erase $2 billion in partnerships." Another added quietly, "And the markets believe this is connected to your wife." Ethan's eyes hardened. "My wife has nothing to do with corporate operations." Grace watched the exchange silently, but the truth sat heavy in the room. When everyone had begun connecting the same dots, Lena left. Deals vanished. Investors followed. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole was not the most powerful person connected to his own company. Lena stood by the window of Daniel's office. The skyline stretched across the horizon. She watched the same city Ethan was staring at miles away, but the view looked different from here. Daniel walked in holding a tablet. "You should see this." He placed it on the table. Financial news channels filled the screen. Cole Global's falling stock price dominated the headlines. Commentators speculated about internal conflict. Some mentioned Lena's name. Others asked if a hidden power struggle existed inside the company. Daniel looked at her carefully. "You realize they're about to turn you into the most mysterious person in finance." Lena gave a quiet smile. "I never wanted attention." Daniel chuckled. "Then you married the wrong billionaire." Her smile faded slightly. For years, she had stayed invisible. Not because she lacked power, but because she believed Ethan valued loyalty. Now that illusion was gone, and the world was starting to notice. Back inside Ethan's office, the tension had grown worse. His phone kept buzzing. Media calls, investor demands, legal advisors requesting emergency meetings. Ethan ignored most of them. He dialed Lena again. The call rang longer this time. Then it went to voicemail. He tried again, and again, nothing. Ethan slammed the phone down. Grace stood nearby. Sir, the board is requesting a stability plan. Ethan's patience snapped. They can wait. Grace didn't move. With respect, they won't. She placed another report on the desk. This is the investor withdrawal projection. Ethan looked down. If the pattern continued, Cole Global could lose half its international backing within months. For the first time that day, Ethan spoke quietly. Where is she? Grace didn't answer immediately, but she already had a suspicion, and it made her uneasy. Inside Daniel's building, a private meeting had begun. 3 investors appeared on a secure video call, all of them powerful, all of them familiar to Lena. One spoke first. We heard what happened this morning. Another leaned closer to the camera. The question now is simple. Where are you going next? Lena listened carefully. These were not ordinary investors. They were members of the same private network Grace had discovered, the silent capital behind dozens of global companies. Daniel watched from the side. Even he seemed curious about her answer. Lena folded her hands. For now, nowhere. The investors exchanged glances. One of them smiled. That means the door is open. Lena didn't confirm, but she didn't deny it either. And in the world of billion-dollar deals, that kind of silence meant everything. Late afternoon shadows stretched across Cole Global headquarters. Grace finally returned to Ethan's office. She looked more serious than before. Sir, we need to talk. Ethan barely looked up. More bad news? Grace placed a tablet on the desk. This isn't speculation anymore. Ethan read the headline. A major financial outlet had published a story. Hidden investor network behind Cole Global, tied to CEO's wife. Ethan's stomach tightened. Grace spoke quietly. The markets are reacting fast. He scrolled further. Another article appeared, then another. Lena's name had begun circulating everywhere, not as Ethan's quiet wife, but as a hidden power broker. Ethan leaned back in his chair. He finally understood something painful. For years, he had underestimated the one person who never demanded recognition. And now the world was discovering her before he ever did. Night had fallen across the city. Lena sat alone in Daniel's office. Most of the staff had already left. The building was quiet. Daniel returned carrying 2 cups of coffee. You've been silent all evening. Lena accepted the cup. I'm thinking. Daniel leaned against the desk. About Ethan? She shook her head. About what comes next. Daniel studied her carefully. You could build something bigger than Cole Global. Half the investors who backed him trust you more. Lena stared at the lights across the skyline. For years, she had helped someone else build power. Now the path ahead was entirely her own, and that kind of freedom carried its own weight. Daniel asked softly. So what do you want? Lena answered without turning. I want to see what happens when people stop underestimating me. The next morning arrived with heavy tension. Ethan entered his office earlier than usual. He hadn't slept. The markets opened in less than an hour. Grace rushed into the room again. Her expression was worse than before. Sir, there's another development. Ethan rubbed his temples. What now? Grace placed a file on the desk. He opened it slowly. Inside were acquisition records. A company had just purchased controlling shares in several investment groups, the same groups that abandoned Cole Global yesterday. Ethan looked up. Who bought them? Grace hesitated. Then she said the name. Victor Hale. The room went silent. Ethan stood up slowly. His rival had moved faster than expected. Grace continued. There's more. Ethan's voice dropped. What? Grace took a breath. Our sources confirmed something else. Ethan stared at her. Grace delivered the final blow. Lena is working with him. Ethan froze, and for the first time in his career, he realized the war had already begun. I didn't expect the war to start this fast. When Grace said Lena was working with Victor Hale, something inside me went cold. For years, Victor had circled my empire like a shark, waiting, watching, looking for one weak point. And yesterday, I handed him one. I walked to the window. The city looked the same as always, but the balance of power inside it had changed overnight. Behind me, Grace stood quietly. Sir, we need to respond immediately. Her voice was careful, controlled. I turned back toward her. Confirm the information. Grace nodded. Our sources traced Lena entering Victor Hale's investment headquarters late last night. The words felt heavier than I expected. Lena, with Victor, the two people who could dismantle everything I built. I felt anger rising, but beneath it was something worse. Recognition. Now, I had underestimated her, and Victor never underestimated anyone. Grace continued. Several investors who left us yesterday have already reopened negotiations. With Victor's group, I stared at the skyline again. For the first time in years, someone else was shaping the future of my company. And that person was the woman I had called insignificant. Across the city, Victor Hale's headquarters buzzed with controlled excitement. Executives moved quickly through polished hallways. Security teams guarded the private conference level. Inside the top floor office, Victor stood beside a long glass table. He watched Lena carefully. Victor Hale was not a man easily impressed, but even he seemed intrigued. You caused quite a reaction yesterday, he said. Lena remained composed. I didn't cause anything. Victor smiled slightly. You walked out of Cole Global. $2 billion followed you. He circled the table slowly. I've studied Ethan Cole for years. He believes power is loud. Victor stopped in front of her. But the real power in his empire was quiet. Lena met his gaze. You invited me here for a reason. Victor nodded. Yes. He tapped the screen on the table. Dozens of financial projections appeared. Help me finish what you started. The room fell silent. Victor wasn't offering revenge. He was offering a new empire. Back at Cole Global, emergency meetings filled the morning. Legal advisors rushed through the building. Public relations teams drafted statements. Analysts tried to calm nervous investors. Inside the executive conference room, Ethan faced his board again. This time the atmosphere was colder. One board member spoke first. Victor Hale is absorbing the investors who left us, another added, and Lena Cole appears to be advising him. The words echoed across the room. Ethan leaned forward slowly. That information isn't confirmed, Grace spoke carefully. Multiple sources verified her presence in Victor's building. The board exchanged worried glances. One director finally said what everyone was thinking. If Lena understands our investor network, she knows exactly where we're vulnerable. Silence filled the room. Because everyone understood the same truth. The woman Ethan humiliated yesterday knew the entire architecture of his empire, and now she might be helping his greatest rival dismantle it. Inside Victor's headquarters, Lena reviewed the financial projections. Each screen showed potential acquisitions, market weaknesses, strategic expansions. Victor leaned against the table. You don't look surprised. Lena shook her head. Ethan built fast. Fast structures have cracks. Victor nodded. That's exactly why I waited. He pointed to a specific market region. Southeast Asia, then another. Middle East logistics. These were Cole Global's strongest growth zones. Lena studied the data carefully. Then she spoke. They were strong because the investors trusted stability. Victor folded his arms. And that stability disappeared yesterday. Lena didn't deny it. Victor watched her closely. You could destroy Ethan Cole's empire within a year. Lena finally looked up. I'm not interested in destruction. Victor raised an eyebrow. Then what are you interested in? Her answer was simple. Control. At Cole Global headquarters, Grace worked through the company's investor database. Every connection Lena built over the years was mapped in front of her. It was more complicated than anyone realized. Lena hadn't just introduced investors. She had earned their trust. Through negotiations, through quiet problem solving, through relationships Ethan rarely noticed. Grace sighed. The deeper she looked, the clearer the truth became. Lena had not simply supported the empire, she had stabilized it. Without her presence, the structure felt fragile. A junior analyst entered the office. Ms. Lin, the stock dropped another 4%. Grace nodded. Prepare the emergency briefing. As the analyst left, Grace stared at the screen again. She whispered quietly to herself. If she wanted revenge, Cole Global wouldn't survive the year. I finally decided to call Victor Hale, not as a rival, but as a man who needed answers. The phone rang once. Victor answered immediately. Ethan? His tone sounded almost amused. I wondered how long it would take. I kept my voice steady. Is Lena with you? Victor paused. Then he laughed quietly. That's your first question? It should be. My hand tightened around the phone. Answer it. Victor spoke slowly. She visited my office. That's all you need to know. I felt anger building again. You're trying to use her against me. Victor's voice became colder. No. You gave her a reason to leave. Silence followed. Victor ended the call with one final sentence. You underestimated the wrong person. The line went dead, and for the first time I had no response. Later that afternoon, Lena walked through Victor's private investment floor. Analysts worked behind glass walls. Massive screens tracked global markets. Victor joined her near the central operations room. You could run this place, he said. Lena watched the activity calmly. You built it well. Victor shrugged slightly. I built half of it. The rest came from patience. They stopped near a window overlooking the city. Victor studied her again. You still haven't answered my proposal. Lena folded her arms. I will. Victor waited. But not today. He smiled. You're careful. She nodded once. Careful people survive longer in this world. Victor laughed quietly. And dangerous people win it. Night returned to the city once again. Inside Cole Global headquarters, most of the building had emptied. Ethan remained in his office. He stared at an old photo on his desk. It showed him and Lena years earlier, before the company became a global empire, before power changed everything. Grace entered quietly. Sir, the media is requesting an interview tomorrow. Ethan didn't move. They want your response to the Lena situation. He finally looked up. What situation? Grace hesitated. Rumors say she may help Victor Hale rebuild the investor network. Ethan looked at the photo again. Then he spoke quietly. She won't destroy the company. Grace wasn't sure if he believed that, or if he was simply hoping it was true. Across the city, Lena stepped onto the balcony outside Victor's office. The wind moved gently across the skyline. Below her, the financial district glowed with activity. Daniel Reyes appeared beside her. You're shaking the entire market. Lena watched the light silently. Daniel leaned on the railing. Victor wants you inside his empire. That's obvious. Daniel turned toward her. But what do you want? Lena took a slow breath. For years she had stayed behind the scenes, hidden, ignored. Now the world was watching her next move. She finally spoke. I want to build something that no one can take away. Daniel nodded slowly. And Ethan? Lena looked toward Cole Global's distant tower. Her voice was calm. He already took something from himself. And he doesn't even realize it yet. Morning arrived with a tension that could be felt across the financial district. News networks replayed the same story again and again. Cole Global Industries was under pressure. Victor Hale's investment group was expanding aggressively. And at the center of every rumor stood one quiet name, Lena Cole. Inside Cole Global headquarters, Ethan walked through the main lobby. Employees stopped talking when he passed. Not out of respect, out of uncertainty. The atmosphere inside the company had changed overnight. Grace joined him near the elevators. The market's open in 20 minutes, she said. Ethan nodded. Give me the numbers. Grace handed him a tablet. Stock dropped another 3% in early trading. He scrolled through the report. Several institutional investors had reduced their positions. Not enough to collapse the company, but enough to signal fear. Grace watched his expression. Sir, investors believe Victor Hale now controls the network Lena built. Ethan handed the tablet back. They're wrong. Grace raised an eyebrow. Then who controls it? Ethan didn't answer, because the truth was becoming painfully clear. No one controlled Lena Cole anymore. Inside Victor Hale's headquarters, a strategic meeting had already begun. Executives gathered around a massive digital table. Global market data floated across the surface. Victor stood at the center. Lena sat quietly beside him. One analyst spoke first. Our acquisition of the Singapore Investment Group is complete. Another followed. The Dubai Logistics Consortium agreed to reopen negotiations. Victor nodded slowly. Then he turned toward Lena. You see the pattern. Lena studied the projections. Investors follow stability. Victor smiled. And right now they believe we have it. He leaned forward slightly. With your help, we could move faster. Lena remained calm. Speed creates mistakes. Victor laughed quietly. Ethan made that mistake already. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the unspoken truth. This was no longer a simple business rivalry. It was a transfer of power, and Lena stood exactly in the middle of it. Back at Cole Global, Grace gathered senior executives in the war room. Large screens displayed live financial data. The numbers were stabilizing slightly, but the damage from yesterday still lingered. Grace addressed the room directly. "We must rebuild investor confidence immediately." One executive asked the question everyone avoided. "Do we contact Lena?" The room went quiet. Grace considered the possibility, but she knew Ethan too well. "Not yet," she replied. Another executive spoke carefully. "If Victor continues absorbing the network, we lose access permanently." Grace nodded. "That's why we move first." She tapped the screen. "Emergency negotiations begin today." Even as she said it, she understood something troubling. None of those negotiations would matter if Lena truly aligned with Victor. Because the real currency in global finance wasn't contracts, it was trust. And Lena held more of it than anyone realized. "I finally decided to do something I should have done years ago." I drove home. The mansion felt different the moment I stepped inside. Too quiet, too empty. Lena's presence used to fill the house in ways I never noticed. Now the silence echoed through every hallway. I walked into her office. The shelves were half empty, files gone, notebooks missing. Only a single folder remained on the desk. I opened it slowly. Inside were copies of old business proposals, investor contacts, deal structures, my early company plans. Every document had notes written in Lena's handwriting. Corrections, improvements, strategies. I stared at the pages in disbelief. Half the decisions that built Cole Global had come from her, and I never even noticed. For the first time in years, I felt something close to regret. At Victor's headquarters, Lena and Daniel met privately in a smaller conference room. Daniel closed the door behind him. "You've become the most valuable person in global finance in less than 48 hours. Lena leaned back slightly. "I didn't plan it that way." Daniel nodded. "But now that it's happening, you have choices." He placed several folders on the table. Each one represented a potential partnership: private equity groups, technology investors, international development funds. Daniel spoke carefully. "You could build your own company tomorrow." Lena looked at the documents. Then she pushed them aside. "Not yet." Daniel frowned. "What are you waiting for?" Lena's voice remained calm. "Timing. In the world of power and money, timing meant everything, and Lena intended to choose the perfect moment." Later that afternoon, Victor joined Lena again in the main office. He carried 2 glasses of water. "You're patient," he said. Lena accepted the glass. "Patience built most of the deals Ethan takes credit for." Victor chuckled. "That doesn't surprise me." He walked toward the window. "Cole Global's board is scrambling today. They're trying to stabilize investors." Lena watched the skyline. "Grace Lynn will slow the damage." Victor glanced back at her. "You respect her?" "Yes." Victor nodded thoughtfully. "Smart woman." Then he turned serious. "But even Grace can't replace what you built." Lena didn't respond. Victor studied her carefully. "You still care about Ethan's company?" Lena looked directly at him. "No. I care about fairness." Victor smiled slightly. "In our world, that's rare." Evening arrived as financial markets closed for the day. Cole Global's stock stabilized slightly, but uncertainty remained everywhere. Inside the executive office, Grace delivered the final report. "We slowed the decline," she said. Ethan nodded. "Good." Grace studied him carefully. "Sir, there's still time to repair this." He looked up. "What do you mean?" Grace hesitated. "You could speak to Lena." The suggestion lingered in the room. Ethan stared at the window again. For years, he believed apologies were weakness. Now he wondered if pride had already cost him too much. But another thought followed immediately. What if Lena refused to listen? The possibility unsettled him more than the collapsing deals. Night fell once again over the financial district. Inside Victor Hale's office, Lena prepared to leave. Victor stopped her near the elevator. "One last question." She turned slightly. Victor folded his arms. "Are you helping me defeat Ethan, or simply walking away from him?" Lena considered the question carefully. Then she answered, I'm building my own path. Victor smiled slowly. That's the most dangerous option. Lena stepped into the elevator. Before the doors closed, she spoke one final sentence. Dangerous doesn't mean wrong. The doors slid shut. Victor watched the elevator descend. For the first time in years, even he wasn't certain how the game would end. The city slept under quiet lights. Inside his dark office, Ethan sat alone. The photo of Lena still rested on his desk. He picked it up slowly. For years, he believed power came from dominance, from winning, from being the loudest voice in every room. But now the truth stood painfully clear. The strongest foundation of his empire had been the person he dismissed. Miles away, Lena looked out across the same skyline. Two people, two futures, one empire caught between them. And tomorrow, the next move would finally be made. If you've been drawn into this story, don't stop here. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Like the video if the twist caught you off guard. And tell us in the comments one question. Should Ethan fight to win Lena back? Or has he already lost her forever? Stay connected. Because the most powerful move in this story hasn't happened yet.